There is a type of love that arrives as a promise of healing and leaving only the certainty that you will never be the same again. Not because it completed you, but because it tore you apart in such a precise way that when you picked up the pieces, you realized that some pieces no longer fit together, and perhaps they never did. And perhaps that is exactly the truth that this love came to reveal, because Simone Weil, who lived only 34 years but understood love with a depth that most never reach in 10 lifetimes, discovered something brutal and liberating at the same time. Over time, she discovered that certain loves don't exist to last. They exist to destroy the person you believed you were and reveal who you really are beneath all the layers of illusion and need that you called identity. And if you've ever loved someone with every fiber of your being, if you've ever felt that without that person you would simply cease to exist, if you've ever woken up in the middle of the night with your heart sinking, because that love has ended or is ending, and you can't understand why something so good had to hurt so much, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know this specific pain that has no name, this feeling that something has been ripped from your chest and left a hole that no other love, no distraction, no rational explanation can fill, and the temptation. The desperate temptation is to believe that you have lost something essential, that you are less whole now, that love was your chance and you failed. But Simone Weil looked at this kind of loss with an honesty so radical that it scares. She didn't offer cheap comfort. She didn't say that time heals all wounds. She didn't promise that you'll find someone better. She said something much harder to hear and infinitely more true. She said that this love hurt so much precisely because it came to show you all the lies you were telling yourself about who you are, about what you need, about what it is to truly love. And while most philosophers talk about love from a safe distance, theorize about eros and agape in comfortable university rooms, Simone Weil lived love like someone living through a fire. She allowed herself to burn completely. And on the other side of that fire, she found something that few have the courage to see. She found that the love that hurts the most is precisely the love that transforms the most. Not in spite of the pain, but through it. Because the pain of losing is not a sign that something went wrong. It is a sign that something went absolutely right. That love fulfilled its purpose, and its purpose was never to make you happy forever. Its purpose was to make you real. And have you ever wondered why some loves leave a mark so much more than others? Why that specific person, that specific relationship, even if it lasted months or just weeks, left a mark deeper than relationships of years? Why decades later you still think about that lost love? Not with romantic nostalgia, but with a strange mixture of pain and gratitude, as if that person had given and taken something from you at the same time. As if the present and the absence were part of the same gesture. And Simone Weil understood this in a way that few can, because she lived her entire life on the border between ecstasy and suffering. She experienced moments of mystical connection so intense that they left her transformed. And she also experienced loneliness and rejection so deep that almost destroyed her. And it was precisely in this impossible tension between love and loss that she discovered the most important truth about human nature. Discovered that we don't love to be whole. We love to be broken in the right way, so that what remains is finally true. And if that sounds cruel, if it sounds like I'm saying that your suffering has a greater purpose and you should be grateful for the pain, wait, because that's not it. Simone Weil didn't romanticize suffering. She looked at it without illusions. She knew what pain is. Pain. That losing someone you love hurts in a way that corrodes the soul. That waking up alone after having slept next to someone every night is violence against the body and the heart. She knew all this because she lived it all. But she also saw that there is a brutal difference between two types of love. There is the love that diminishes you, disguised as completeness. And there is the love that destroys you to rebuild you truly. And the tragedy is that most of us spend our lives confusing the two, chasing the love that makes us feel safe, when what we need is the love that makes us feel real. And now, you need to know something about this channel, about what we do here. Because if you've come this far and something inside you is shaking, if these words are touching a wound you didn't even know was open, If you feel like finally someone is talking about love, the way love really is, and not the way movies and songs promise it would be, then you need to sign up now, because we're going to spend the next few minutes exploring together something that most people avoid their entire lives. We're going to look directly at the truth that some loves only exist to teach us how to lose. And that's not sad poetry. It's wisdom that Simone Weil paid with her own life to discover. And you're not alone on this journey of understanding why that specific love hurt that specific way. There are thousands of people watching this right now around the world, each carrying their own version of that pain. And together we're going to discover that the loss is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of something that you cannot yet see, but is already happening inside you. So sign up, because what comes next will completely change the way you see not only that love you lost, but all the loves that are yet to come. And you need every word that is yet to come. You need to hear what Simone Weil discovered about the nature of love, loss, and the transformation that happens when you finally stop fighting what has already happened and start looking at what this is trying to show you about who you really are. Now let me tell you something about Simone Weil that most people don't know. Something that explains why she understood this kind of love and loss in such a profound way. She wasn't just an abstract philosopher writing about love in theory. She was a woman who lived every word she wrote, who turned philosophy into flesh and blood. And at the age of 14, she had an existential crisis so severe that it almost killed her. Not literally, but spiritually. Because she grew up in the shadow of an older brother called André, who was a genius. A recognized mathematician, a prodigy who solved problems that adults could not, and Simone looked at him and saw what she believed to be true genius, and looked at herself and saw only mediocrity. And she wrote later that in that period she considered herself stupid, incapable of reaching the heights of thought that her brother reached with ease. And this led her to seriously contemplate the possibility that her life was worthless, that if she could not be extraordinary, then she was not worth existing. And this experience of feeling fundamentally inadequate, of loving something or someone, in this case intellectual excellence, and feeling that you could never achieve it, that experience marked Simone forever. It left a wound that never completely closed. But it also opened in her an ability to understand suffering that most never develop. Because when you have already touched the bottom of that kind of despair, when you have looked into the abyss of your own inadequacy and survived, you develop a brutal compassion for all who suffer, not the condescending compassion of someone looking down from above, but the fierce compassion of someone who knows exactly how it's being broken. And Simone carried this wound her whole life. She suffered from severe headaches since she was a teenager, pains so intense that they sometimes left her incapacitated for days. And later in life, she would say that it was through these incessant physical pains that she learned to distinguish between ordinary suffering and what she called affliction, which is a French word that is difficult to translate, but which means something like affliction or misfortune, a type of suffering that not only hurts the body but destroys the soul, that makes you feeling less than human, which erodes your ability to believe that you have value or deserve love. And that distinction is absolutely crucial to understanding what Simone discovered about love and loss, because she realized that there are losses that just hurt, that are difficult, but you survive, you cry, you process, you eventually move on. And there are losses that distress you, that hit you on such a deep level that you are no longer the same person afterwards. The ground beneath your feet disappears, and you fall into a void where all the certainties you had over yourself dissolve, and the love you lost, that love that still hurts when you think about it, was probably of the second kind. It was a love that afflicted you, not just hurt you. And Simone knew exactly how that is, because she lived it in many ways. She fell in love with ideas, with causes, with people, with an intensity that scared those around her. She didn't know how to love halfway. When she loved, it was with everything, and that meant that when she lost everything too, and there is a story about Simone that perfectly illustrates this. In 1936, she went to Spain to fight in the Civil War on the side of the Republicans. She was this delicate philosopher with chronic headaches. She took a gun and literally went to war because she believed in the cause. and there she had an accident, stepped in boiling oil, and seriously burned her foot, and had to return to France, and to the Rie. For the rest of her life, she carried not just the physical scar, but the emotional pain of having failed, of not being able to make the difference she wanted to make, of having loved a cause and not being strong enough to serve it properly. And that experience of inadequacy, of loving something bigger than yourself and finding out that you are not enough, is something that resonates deeply with the experience of loving someone and finding out that you are not enough to make them stay, or that they are not enough to fill the void inside you. And Simone began to. Seeing a pattern in all of this, she began to realize that the problem wasn't that she loved wrong or that she chose the wrong people. The problem was much more fundamental. The problem was that she was using love to try to fix something inside of her that no love could fix. She was seeking completion through another. She was trying to fill a void that actually needed to be recognized, inhabited, even loved in itself. And this takes us to the heart of Simone Weil's philosophy on love, because she developed this concept called decreation, which is absolutely central to understanding why some loves hurt so much. Decreation is not destruction. It is not annihilation. It is something much more subtle and much more radical. It is the process of undoing the false self, the constructed ego, all the layers of identity that you have accumulated, trying to be someone worthy of love. And Simone realized that most of what we call love is actually need in disguise. It is ego seeking confirmation through the other. It is emptiness trying to fill itself with someone's presence. And this type of love, however intense it may be, however true it may seem in the moment, it is fundamentally based on a lie. It is based on the idea that you need the other to be complete. And then, when that love inevitably ends, because any love based on need eventually ends or turns into toxic dependency, you don't just feel the pain of losing the person. You feel the pain of losing what you believe to be yourself in their presence. You lose the version of you that existed in that relationship, and that's why it hurts so much. It's not just the absence of the person, it's the absence of who you are. It was when I was with her, and Simone saw that this kind of loss, as painful as it is actually an opportunity in disguise. It's the chance to finally see through all the false layers you've built up, all the masks you wore, all the theater of being someone worthy of love. And when that theater collapses, when you no longer have an audience, when you're alone in the dark with no one to validate your existence, you can finally begin to see who you really are underneath it all. And that revelation is terrifying, because what you discover is that you are much less and much more than you believed yourself to be. Much less because all those qualities that you thought defined you were in fact just performances, and much more because there is a depth in you that you didn't even know existed, an ability to exist without need, to love without possessing, to be without needing to prove anything to anyone. But getting there, getting to that place of naked truth, requires going through a kind of death, and that's exactly what the love that hurt the most did to you. It killed you in a way. It killed the person you believed in. Being, and what is now being born into place, is someone you do not yet fully recognize, but who is infinitely more real. And here's where most people stop. Here's where they decide that the pain is too much, that this philosophy is beautiful in theory, but impossible in practice, because Simone Weil isn't offering comfort. She's offering truth, and truth always hurts more in the beginning than the comfortable lies you've been telling yourself. So let's go deeper. Let's go to the place that scares. Let's explore exactly what that love came to reveal about you. And the first thing it revealed, the first brutal truth that you're probably resisting with all your might, the forces, is that you didn't love that person the way you thought you did. You loved what that person made you feel about yourself. You loved the version of you that existed in their eyes. You loved the feeling of being chosen, wanted, needed. And that doesn't mean your love was fake. It doesn't mean you were faking or manipulating. It just means that your love was mixed with need in a way that you couldn't see at the time. Because when you're inside love, when you're in that state of fusion where the boundaries between you and the other, they become blurry, it's impossible to see it clearly. You genuinely believe that without that person you will die, that your life loses meaning, that you simply can't go on. And Simone Weil knew this feeling intimately because she herself went through it several times in her life. She fell in love with causes and people with an intensity that bordered on self-destruction. And every time she lost, she felt that part of her died with it. But over time, she began to notice something strange. She began to realize that the part of her that died in these moments of loss was always the false part, the constructed part, the part that needed that person or cause to feel real, and what survived, what remained after all the smoke cleared, was something much simpler and much truer. It was the pure ability to exist, to be present, to look at reality without illusions. And she began to develop what called attention, which is different from concentration or focus. Attention in the Weilean sense is a form of total presence where you look at something, person or situation, or even your own pain, without trying to change it, without projecting your needs onto it, without turning it into an object of desire or fear. You simply look. You give pure attention. And Simone discovered something revolutionary. She discovered that when you give pure attention to something, you automatically decree. You automatically let go of the ego that is always trying to control, manipulate, possess. And in the space created by that pure attention, something impossible can happen. You can love without needing it. You can be present without losing yourself. You can give everything without expecting anything in return. But here is the problem. Here is why this is so difficult. We are not trained to give pure attention. We are trained to consume, to use, to extract value from everything, including the people we love. We are taught from a young age that our value depends on being chosen, wanted, loved. So we develop a whole psychological structure based on this need for external validation. And when we enter into a relationship, we bring all this baggage with us. We bring this desperate need to be confirmed, to know that we are enough, to be sure that we won't be abandoned, and we put all of that on top of the other person. We make them responsible for filling voids that they could never fill. And then when they inevitably fail, when the relationship ends, or they reveal that they are not who you designed them to be, you feel betrayed, abandoned, destroyed. But what really happened is that your illusions were destroyed, not you. And that is the distinction that Simone Weil spent her life trying to make people understand. There is a difference between you and the idea you have of yourself. There is a difference between true love and the disguised need for love. And the love that hurt the most came precisely to force you to see that difference, came to show you how many layers of illusion you were carrying, how many lies you were telling yourself about who you are and what you are. You need to be happy, and now you are in the hardest place possible. You are in that moment between the death of the false and the birth of the true. And that in-between space is where most people run. It is where they run to another relationship, to obsessive work, to addictions and distractions, anything to not have to be alone with the naked truth of who they really are without all the masks. But Simone Weil is inviting you to do the opposite. She is inviting you to inhabit that void, to look directly into it without trying. Fill it, because it is only in that emptiness that you can finally find something that no external love could ever give you. You can find the ability to exist without need, to be real instead of adequate, to love instead of needing. And that sounds impossible now. I know it sounds like abstract philosophy that doesn't help when you're waking up alone every night feeling like your heart has been ripped out of your chest. But stay with me, because Simone isn't offering empty words. She's offering a path that she herself has walked through the fire, and she knows exactly how impossible it seems at the beginning. She knows because she too wanted to give up 1,000 times. She also felt that the pain was too great, that it would be easier to just give in to despair or build new illusions to protect herself from the truth. But she didn't do that. She kept looking, kept paying attention, kept allowing the false to die so that the true could be born. And what she found on the other side of that death was not the absence of pain, but the transformation of pain. She discovered that when you stop fighting the pain, when you look at it directly with attention. Pure. Pain reveals its message, and the message is always the same deep down. The message is that you were living a lie, and the truth is calling you back home. You were losing yourself in another, and your true self is asking to be recognized. You were building castles of illusion, and reality is showing you that only what is real can remain. And then you tell me question. You look at me through this screen and ask, okay, I understand the philosophy. I understand that the love I lost came to show me something, but how do I live with it? How do I wake up tomorrow and every day after knowing that that love is over, knowing that the person I loved is no longer here, knowing that maybe I never loved the way I thought I did? How do I carry that truth without being crushed by it? And that question is legitimate. That question is real. And Simone Weil doesn't give you an easy answer. Because there is no easy answer. It doesn't tell you that time will heal, that you will overcome, that one day you will wake up and the pain will magically disappear. It tells you something much more difficult but much more true. It tells you that you learn to live with the open wound. You develop the ability to carry the truth without being defined by it. And that starts with recognizing that there are two types of suffering happening inside you right now. There is the primary suffering, which is the real pain of loss, the lack of that person, the absence of the love you had. And there is the secondary suffering, which is the whole story that you tell about that pain, the whole narrative that you are not enough, that you will never love like that again, that there is something fundamentally wrong with you. And here's the thing. You have no control over the primary suffering. It just is. It will be there as long as it is. It could be months or years, or maybe some form of it will stay forever. And trying to fight it, trying to make it go away through willpower or positive thinking only increases the suffering, but the secondary suffering, that whole narrative, that your mind creates around the pain, that you can learn to let go of. Not all at once, not completely, but gradually, moment by moment. You can begin to notice when you are adding history to the raw pain, when you are turning loss into identity, when you are making the wound the center of who you are. And every time you notice that, you have a choice. You can keep feeding the narrative, or you can gently return to the raw pain without interpretation. And Simone Weil called this attention to suffering. It is not trying to fix it. It is not seeking meaning. It's simply being present with what is, observing how the pain manifests in your body, noticing the thoughts that arise without identifying with them, allowing all of this to exist without resistance, but also without fusion. You feel the pain, but don't become the pain. You observe the thoughts, but don't blindly believe them all. And this creates a space, small at first, but growing. A space between you and your suffering where something new can exist. And in that space, you can start to ask different questions. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? What did I do? Did I do wrong? How do I make it stop? You can start asking what this pain is trying to show me, what truth is hidden in this loss, who I can become if I stop fighting what is. And these questions change everything because they come from a different place. They don't come from the wounded ego wanting to get revenge or protect itself. They come from something deeper that is genuinely curious about the truth. And Simone has found that when you start asking these questions and really listening to the answers, not the answers that your mind wants to give, but the ones that emerge from the silence deep down, you start to see patterns that were invisible before. You start to see how in that relationship you were repeating old dynamics, how you were projecting wounds from the past onto the person you loved, how you were using love to avoid looking at parts of yourself that needed to be seen. And seeing this is not pleasant. It does not bring immediate relief. In fact, it can intensify the pain for a while because now, in addition to losing the person, you are also losing all the illusions you had about yourself. But this intensification is necessary. It is part of the cleansing process. It's the fever that indicates that your system is fighting the infection, and if you can stay present through this intensification, if you can keep looking even when you want to close your eyes, something begins to change subtly. The pain doesn't necessarily lessen, but your relationship with it changes. You stop being a victim of the pain and become a witness to it. You stop asking when it will end and start asking what this is teaching me. And this change of perspective, This ability to be with the pain without being consumed by it is what Simone called consent, isn't it? Passive resignation is not accepting that you are condemned to suffer forever. It is something much more active and much more powerful. It is choosing not to fight against reality. It is saying yes to what is even when what is hurts terribly. It is recognizing that this pain is part of your journey and that resisting it only makes it heavier. And here is something that will sound paradoxical, but is profoundly true, which, when you stop fighting the pain, when you consent to it completely, it begins to reveal something that was hidden within it all along. It begins to show that within the loss there is also presence. Within the absence there is memory. Within the end there is also all the love that was experienced. And that doesn't mean you have to be grateful for the loss or pretend that everything is okay. It just means that when you stop reducing your experience to just pain or just loss, you can start to see the full picture. You can see that yes, you have lost something precious, and also you have gained something. You have gained clarity about who you are. You have gained awareness of patterns that needed to be broken. You have gained the opportunity to build a truer self instead of continuing to sustain a false self. And perhaps most importantly, you have gained the ability to love differently in the future, not because you will meet the right person or have learned the right techniques, but because you are becoming someone capable of true love. Love that you don't need to possess. Love that can exist even in absence. Love that sees the other as they really are, instead of as projection of your needs. And this type of love is rare. This type of love is what Simone called impersonal love or pure love. And it can only be achieved through decreation, through this process of letting go of the false self that loves out of necessity and discovering the true self that loves because love is its essential nature, not because it needs something in return. And now I need to pause because there is something important I want to know about you. There is something that will connect us in a deeper way. I want to know where you are watching me from right now. What part of the world are you from? What city? What country? Because think about it. Right now there are thousands of people around the planet who are going through exactly the same pain as you, who have lost a love that transformed them, who are waking up every night feeling that same brutal loneliness. And somehow we all found these words by Simone Weil, who have crossed decades and oceans to reach us. And there is something deeply beautiful and comforting in knowing that you are not alone. That in Sao Paulo or New York or Tokyo or some small town that no one knows about, there is someone who understands exactly what you are feeling because they are feeling the same thing. So go to the comments now and just write your city and country. You don't need to explain your story or describe your pain. Just leave your location. Leave your mark so that others who pass by can see and know that they are not alone. And when you come back and read the comments in the next one day, when you see all these cities listed, you will understand something that Simone Weil understood deeply. You will understand that suffering is universal, but it is also what connects us most deeply. It is what makes us human. It is what allows us to truly see and love each other instead of just using each other to fill our voids. So leave your comment now, leave your city, and then come back here because we need to go even deeper. We need to explore what happens when you finally stop running away from the truth that this loss is revealing, when you look directly at the mirror that this broken love is showing you and see your real reflection for the first time. Because here's the part that almost no one tells you about losing a great love. The part that Simone Weil saw with brutal clarity. That love didn't complete you, and then it went away, leaving you incomplete. That love revealed your incompleteness that was always there, and when it left, you came face to face with that naked truth. You were left alone with all the parts of yourself that you had been avoiding looking at, all the old wounds that you covered with the presence of the other, all the fears about your own worth that you soothed with his validation, and now there is nothing between you and these truths. Now you have to look directly at the emptiness that has always been inside you, and that emptiness, that hole in the center of your being that you have always tried to fill with love, with work, with achievements, with anything that makes you feel real and valuable. That emptiness is not a defect that needs to be fixed. It is your essential nature. It is what Simone called the sacred space, where something greater can enter. But first, you have to stop trying. To fill it, you have to stop treating it as an enemy and start seeing it as a portal, and that goes against everything they taught you. They taught you that to be complete is to be filled. They taught you that emptiness is a sign of lack. They taught you that you need to be self-sufficient, or at least appear to be. But Simone saw that all these ideas are illusions of the ego trying to protect itself from the fundamental truth of human existence. And the fundamental truth is this: you are essentially incomplete. You are essentially dependent. You are essentially vulnerable. And accepting this, really accepting it in the depths of your soul, not as a concept, but as a lived reality, is terrifying because it means letting go of every fantasy of control. It means admitting that you need things you cannot control. It means recognizing your radical fragility. But here is the paradox that Simone discovered. It is exactly this acceptance of incompleteness that frees you from the neurotic need. When you stop fighting the emptiness, when you stop being ashamed of it, when you recognize it as an essential part of being human, you can finally stop using others to fill you. You can finally love without that desperate urgency that turns love into dependence. You can finally be in relationship without losing yourself because you are no longer trying to find yourself in another. And that is the great teaching that painful love came to give you. It came to show you that as long as you are trying to be complete through another, you will never be free. You will always be a hostage to your needs. You will always be vulnerable to rejection in a way that destroys your ability to remain centered. But when you accept your emptiness, when you stop treating it as a problem to be solved, you can finally be present with another in a true way. You can finally love without a hidden agenda, without an invisible contract that I love you so you have to make me feel complete. And Simone lived this in a radical way. She went through moments of deep connection with certain people, moments where she felt that perhaps she had found someone who understood her completely. And then inevitably, these moments passed. People moved away or revealed that they could not give her what she needed. And every time Simone was thrown back into her emptiness, all time she had to face the essential loneliness of human existence. And eventually she stopped seeing it as failure and began to see it as grace. Began to see that each time she was forced back into loneliness, she was being invited to go deeper, to shed yet another layer of illusion, to discard yet another piece of the ego that insisted on seeking completeness outside, and through this repeated process of losing and returning to herself, she developed something extraordinary. She developed the capacity to love purely, to give full attention to another without projecting her needs. In it, of being completely present without losing yourself, of loving intensely without clinging. And this is not indifference or cold detachment. It is something much warmer and much more real. It is love that comes from fullness rather than lack. Love that offers rather than demands. Love that sees the other as they really are rather than as you need them to be. But getting there, developing that capacity for pure love, requires going through the fire of loss not once, but many times. Requires letting the love you have lost break you completely. Letting it reveals all the ways you were loving out of necessity instead of love, all the ways you were using the other to avoid yourself. And then, in the midst of these ruins of what you thought was true love, you have to start rebuilding, not the relationship because that once was, but your capacity to love, your understanding of what love really is. And Simone would tell you that true love is attention. It is the ability to look at the other without wanting to change them, without wanting to possess them, without wanting to use them to fill your emptiness. True love is this total presence that recognizes the other as completely separate from you, and yet connects you to them in a deeper way than any fusion could, because fusion is an illusion of unity, where in truth there are just two desperate egos trying not to feel alone. But attention is real union, where two complete beings in their incompleteness meet without losing their boundaries, see each other without possessing each other, love each other without devouring each other. And maybe the love you lost didn't have that quality. Maybe it was fusion disguised as love. Maybe it was two emptinesses trying to meet each other, fill each other. And when they inevitably couldn't, When reality invaded fantasy, everything fell apart, and you felt like betrayal. But it wasn't betrayal. It was just the truth revealing itself. It was the impossibility of sustaining an illusion indefinitely. And now you are in the most valuable place possible. You are in the place where you can consciously choose what kind of love you want to cultivate from now on. You can choose to keep seeking fusion, keep trying to fill your emptiness through another, and inevitably suffer the same pain over and over again. Or you can choose the path that Simone is showing you. You can choose to accept your emptiness, decrement your ego, develop the capacity for pure attention. And then when the next love comes, and it will come in one form or another, you can enter into it as a whole person instead of half of it. If you've been waiting for your other half, you can truly love instead of needing and calling it love. And that possibility, that chance to completely transform your capacity to love, is the gift hidden within the pain you're feeling right now. That's why this love had to hurt so much, because nothing short of this brutal pain could force you to look at the truths you've been avoiding. Nothing short of this devastating loss could give you enough motivation to do the terrifying work of decreation, of letting go of who you thought you were and finding out who you really are beneath all the layers of need and fear. So now let's go to the deepest place of all. Let's go to the place that Simone Weil came to after years of suffering, years of loss, years of looking straight at the truth without blinking. And what she found there will sound impossible, but it is absolutely real. She found that when you completely believe, when you let go of even the idea that you need to be someone or have something to be valuable, when you accept your emptiness so completely that there is no resistance left, something impossible happens, something that you cannot seek or force, but that comes of itself when all the conditions are right, and Simone called it grace. And she wasn't talking about an abstract religious concept. She was talking about real, concrete experience. She was talking about moments where something that is beyond the ego, beyond the mind, beyond everything you can control or understand, simply enters the space that you created through decreation. And suddenly, everything changes. Not the external circumstances, not the person comes back or the pain disappears, but something inside changes deeply. You remain alone, but the loneliness turns into sacred solidity. You remain hurt, but the wound becomes a portal to truth. You continue without that love. But suddenly you realize that there is a greater love sustaining you, not romantic or human love, but love that is the very structure of reality, a presence that was always there, but you couldn't feel while you were too busy trying to fill your emptiness with temporary things. And Simone experienced this several times in her life. She experienced it in Solsmes in 1938 when she had headaches so severe she could barely think. And there, listening to Gregorian chants in that monastery, something happened. She felt a presence that was not hers, but that was absolutely real. She felt that at the bottom of all suffering, there is something that sustains. There is a presence that does not abandon you even when everything else abandons you. And she experienced it again in Assisi a year before, when she entered that small chapel where St. Francis used to pray, and something literally forced her to her knees. She who was so intellectual, so rational, so skeptical about religious experiences, was dominated by something bigger than herself, was touched by something that she could only describe as absolute love. Love that asks for nothing, that doesn't judge, that is simply present with all that is. And here's what you need to understand. Simone wasn't seeking these experiences. She wasn't doing spiritual practices trying to achieve enlightenment. She was simply living her life with full attention. She was looking at her pain without running away. She was accepting her emptiness without trying to fill it. And in those moments of total acceptance, when there was no longer anything of the ego trying to control or seek or avoid, grace came in. And grace, in the sense that Simone describes it, is not something that you can deserve or achieve. It is not reward for good behavior or right thinking. It is exactly the opposite. It is what can only come in when you completely stop trying to deserve anything, when you accept that you are fundamentally undeserving, and that is okay. When you let go of even the need to be worthy of love, And then, in that total emptiness, in that radical acceptance of your own inadequacy, you paradoxically discover that you have always been loved, always been held, always been exactly where you were supposed to be, not because you are special or have done things certain, but simply because you exist, because existence itself is grace, because the fact that there is something instead of nothing is the first and greatest miracle. And all small miracles, including human love, are just reflections of that original miracle. And when you touch that truth, even for a moment, everything changes. You realize that the love you lost was not the only source of love in your life. It was not even the main source. It was just a temporary portal to remind you of something you already knew but had forgotten. To remind you that you are sustained by something much greater than any human love, and that this greater presence never goes away, never abandons you. It is always there waiting for you to stop running and come home. And home is not a person or place. Home is this state of being where you don't need anything else to be complete. Because you finally understood that completeness doesn't come from having everything. It comes from accepting that you don't need everything. It comes from making peace with your emptiness. It comes from stopping fighting reality and learning to dance with it. And I know that sounds too mystical. I know that when you're in the midst of pain, it seems like beautiful philosophy that doesn't help with anything practical. But Simone wasn't offering philosophy. She was offering a map of territory that she herself crossed. She was saying, look, I know exactly where you are right now. I've been there many times. I've felt that same pain of losing love that felt essential. I've felt that same emptiness that feels like it's going to swallow you. But I kept looking. I kept accepting. I kept decreating. And on the other side, I found something that no human love could ever give. I found peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. I found love that can't be taken away because it doesn't come from outside. I found myself finally real instead of constructed. And you can find it too, not because you are special or because it will make everything right, but simply because when you stop running away, when you look directly at what is, the truth reveals itself, and the truth is always liberating even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Because pain is often the only thing strong enough to break the illusions that imprison us. Pain is often the only teacher that can teach us what years of philosophy and therapy could not. And the love you lost was your strictest teacher, taught you through absence what presence could not teach you. It showed you through loss. What having could not show, it revealed to you through pain, truths that comfort would have kept hidden, and now you have a choice. You can resist that teaching. You can become bitter. You can build walls to never be hurt like this again. You can decide that love is not worth it because it hurts too much. Or you can accept the teaching. You can honor that love by recognizing that it gave you something precious, even as it took everything from you. You can use that pain as fuel for real transformation, instead of just trauma to be overcome. You can choose to see this loss not as an end, but as the beginning of something that you cannot yet fully imagine, but that is already being born within you. And maybe you're thinking, okay, I understand the philosophy. I understand that I need to accept emptiness and decrement the ego and develop pure attention, but how do I do that practically when I wake up every morning feeling like my heart has been ripped out? How do I do that when I see something that reminds me of that person and I feel a physical pain in my chest? How do I do that when the loneliness is so heavy that I feel like I'm going to suffocate? And that question is valid. That question is necessary because Simone Weil didn't just offer abstract philosophy, she developed practices. Concrete, specific ways of being with the pain that don't make it go away, but make it possible to carry it with dignity instead of being crushed by it. And the first practice is simply that, morning attention to the pain. You wake up and before you do anything else, before you pick up the phone or plan the day or try to distract yourself, you sit in silence for 10 minutes and simply observe what hurts. Not to fix it, not to understand it, just to see it clearly. You name it internally. Today, the loneliness is here. Today, the lack of it is present. Today, my heart is heavy. You just acknowledge it without judgment, without trying to change, and this creates a subtle but crucial difference. Instead of you being the pain, you are observing the pain. There is a small space between you and it, and in that space, there is freedom. Second practice, attention to the beautiful in the midst of the ugly. When the pain is unbearable, you choose something beautiful. It can be sky through the window. It can be music that you love. It can be poem that touches you. And you give your full attention to that beauty for 5 minutes. It is not distraction. It is a reminder that reality contains both pain and beauty, both loss and possibility. You allow beauty to exist alongside pain without denying any. And Simone said that beauty is experimental proof that incarnation is possible. It is proof that total presence can happen even in the midst of suffering. Third practice, release the narrative. Your mind tells a story about your pain. This pain will never go away. I will always be like this. I will never love again. And when you catch your mind telling this story, you simply recognize this is story, not fact, and you gently return to the sensation raw, without interpretation. You feel just what you are feeling without adding layers of meaning. And this stops the cycle where pain turns into identity, where you start to define yourself by the wound. Fourth practice, do without ego. You keep living. You work. You create. You take care of the things that need to be taken care of. But you do all this without demanding that activities fill your void. You do it because it is what there is to do, not because it will make you feel better. And this is a form of decreation in action. You act but without seeking emotional reward, without needing life to validate your value. Fifth practice, consent to the day. When you wake up, you choose to accept whatever comes, pain or relief or both or neither. You internally say, I accept whatever this day brings. And when the day brings pain, you remember that you consented. You are not caught by surprise. You chose to be present with what is. Sixth practice, write a letter to the pain. Once a week, you write to the pain as if it were a person. You thank it for what it taught. You recognize the weight you carry. You ask for strength to continue. It is not therapy. It is recognition. It is a way of honoring the pain instead of just trying to eliminate it. Seventh practice, being present to the other when you are with someone. You give your total attention to them, not to your pain. You practice being present despite the pain. And Simone said that attention to the other is purest form of love and momentarily decrees us, takes us out of ourselves, puts us in service of something greater. Eighth practice, nightly recognition ritual. Before sleeping, you recognize 3 things: a truth that pain revealed today, a moment of grace, even small, a choice to remain. You don't force positivity. You just recognize what was. And this cultivates gratitude that doesn't deny pain, but recognizes that there is more than just pain. And here is something crucial about these practices. They are not magical cures. Some days you will be able to do them, and some days it will be impossible, and that's okay. Failing to practice is not failure. It's part of the process. The goal is not perfection, it's direction. You are learning to live differently, to be in pain differently. And that takes time. It takes trial and error. It takes compassion with yourself when you fail. Simone herself couldn't live perfectly what she taught. She had moments of despair, moments where the pain was too much, moments where she wanted to give up. But she kept trying, kept practicing attention, kept decreating, and gradually something changed inside her. Not the pain, it didn't disappear, but she developed the ability to carry pain without being defined by it. She learned to exist with an open wound, but not let the wound be all that she is. And you can learn too. Not because you are strong or special, but simply because you are willing to try, because you are willing to look instead of running away, because you are willing to accept instead of resist. And now we have reached the end of this journey together, and I need to tell you something important. I need to honor the courage you had to get here, to look at things that most people avoid their entire lives, to stay present with words that probably touched wounds that you would rather forget. Because watching this entire video was an act of courage. It was a way of saying, I am willing to look at what hurts. I am willing to seek truth even when truth hurts. And Simone Weil would say that you are among the few who truly understand that life. It's not about avoiding pain, it's about living truthfully. And the love you lost, that love that still hurts when you think about it, was not a mistake or a tragedy or a sign that something was wrong with you. It was precisely the love you needed to show you what needed to be seen, to break you the way you needed to be broken, to force you to look at truths that you had been avoiding. And now you are in the holiest place possible. You are in that space between who you were and who you are becoming, between the death of the false and the birth of the real. And that space is terrifying because you no longer have old certainties, but no new certainties. You are no longer who you were, but you still don't fully know who you are. But that empty space, that not knowing, is where real transformation happens. It's where you can finally stop building identity based on need and start discovering who you are when you don't need to be anyone specific to anyone specific. And the pain you feel now, however heavy it may be, is molding you into something you can't yet see but one day will recognize is teaching you. To love in a way you've never loved before, it's preparing you for connections you didn't even know were possible. Not because pain has a magical purpose, but simply because when you look directly at pain without running away, when you dwell in it with full attention, it naturally reveals its wisdom. It naturally transforms you, and you don't need to believe me. You don't need to accept it as absolute truth. You just need to keep looking, keep practicing mindfulness, keep decreating, and see for yourself what happens. See if gradually something changes, if slowly the ability to carry pain increases, if subtly you begin to realize that there is more to you than just hurt. There is strength that you didn't know you had. There is wisdom that only pain could teach. There is love that doesn't need an object to exist. And if you felt that something changed inside you during these minutes we spent together, if some truth here resonated with a deep part of your soul that you barely knew existed, then leave a like on this video, because it shows me that these words are reaching those who really need them, those who have the courage to look at what hurts and instead of continuing to run away, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue this journey of looking directly at the truth even when it hurts. Because there are others who are walking this same path, and you don't have to walk alone. There is a community of people who understand that real life is not about superficial happiness, but about deep truth. It is not about avoiding suffering, but about transforming suffering into wisdom. And together, we can continue to explore these difficult territories that most avoid. We can continue to honor the complexity and pain of human existence without trying to simplify it or solve it with easy answers. And there is a quote from Simone Weil that sums up everything we explored today. She said that love is consenting from a distance. It is loving purely without the need for presence. It is allowing the other to exist even in absence, and perhaps the love you lost is teaching you exactly that. It is teaching you to love without possessing, to carry someone in your heart without needing to have them in your life, to honor what was without bitterness for what is no longer. And this ability to love through absence, to keep an open heart even when painful, to continue believing in love even after losing love, that is the deepest transformation possible. It is not overcoming or healing or moving on as if nothing had happened. It is integrating the loss in such a way that it becomes part of who you are but not all that you are. It is allowing the scar to exist without letting the scar define you. It is recognizing that you were changed by that love but not destroyed by it. And Simone Weil only lived 34 years. But in that short time, she looked more deeply into the nature of love and loss than most dare in a lifetime. She found no cure, but she found dignity. She found no escape, but she found meaning. She found no way to avoid pain, but she found a way to live with pain without being diminished by it. And perhaps that is what we are all really looking for. Not the absence of pain, but the ability to carry pain with truth, with care, with love. Not romantic love that needs an object, but essential love that is your deepest nature. Love that can exist even when you are alone, even when you are broken, even when you have nothing for it. Giving because true love doesn't come from having, but from being. And you are not alone in this journey of discovering who you are when all the illusions are taken away, when all the loves you used to define yourself are gone. When you finally have to face yourself naked and real, there are millions of people around the world right now who are in the same process of decreation, of letting go of who they thought they were and discovering who they really are. And we are all stumbling in the dark together. We are all learning to live with open wounds. We are all discovering that real transformation doesn't come from adding things, but from letting things go. Doesn't come from building stronger identity, but from decreasing constructed identity. Doesn't come from finding perfect love, but from becoming capable of true love. And the pain you carry now, heavy as it is preparing you for it. It's sculpting you. It's revealing you. It's freeing you from false versions of yourself so that the real you can finally breathe. And you don't have to be thankful for the pain. You don't have to pretend you're happy that you lost that love. You just need to keep looking, keep feeling, keep living, because that's exactly what Simone Weil would do. She would look directly at the pain. She would give it her full attention. She would consent to it completely. And then she would keep living with all the truth and all the intensity she could muster. And in the end, her life was measured not by how many years she lived, but by how deeply she lived, how honestly she looked, how courageously she loved. And you have that same choice now. You can live superficially avoiding everything that hurts, or you can live deeply embracing all that is real even when real hurts terribly. And if you choose the second path, if you choose to live with truth instead of comfort, with presence instead of distraction, with love instead of need, then you will discover that the life that awaits you on the other side of this pain is richer and more real than any life you could. Having built on foundations of illusion, keep looking, keep feeling, keep living, because you are not alone. And the pain you carry is transforming you into someone you cannot yet imagine but the world desperately needs. Someone who knows how to truly love because you have learned through loss. Someone who knows how to be present because you have learned through absence. Someone who knows how to be real because all the masks have been ripped off and there is nothing left to hide.